this pit bull has punctured this lady's abdomen, and he's just latched on here, and she's trying to get him off, and she's standing next to her house, and I run over, and he's not letting go. He's here, and so I'm like, hey, don't move. I pin her with my forearm against the building, and now this dog is like, "Arr," and he's still latched on, and he's looking at me. I take my gun out, angle it into his eye, and pop him, boom, and the dog falls off, and he's dead. And this lady's like, oh my God. Well, man, she ends up filing a complaint with my department because I had killed her pet. She ended up going to the ER, walked out against medical advice, and then became septic because of her injuries. Yeah. And at the time, I was like, serves her well.
Today on My Journey with the Badge, I'm joined by Aurelio DeLaRosa. He began his law enforcement career with the Rockford Police Department in Illinois in April of 1991 and served there for over 26 years, retiring in May of 2017 as a detective. He then continued his service with the Scott County Sheriff's Office in Iowa as a bailiff from October of 2020 to April of 2023. At the Rockford Police Department, Aurelio served as an investigator and spent 23 years as a SWAT operator. His assignments included patrol, the community-oriented policing unit, the bike unit, and he was a field training officer. He was also a department instructor for both recruit academies and in-service training, covering areas such as use of force, firearms, and defensive tactics. He served as an assistant range master, department armorer, and regularly served as a translator for a wide array of incidents and investigations. He held additional roles on the Use of Force Review Committee, Awards Committee, and chaired the Peer-to-Peer Support Committee. In 2021, he was appointed by the governor to serve as a state commissioner on the Commission of Professional Policing. Aurelio, thank you for being here today, and thank you for agreeing to share your story with us.
Thank you.
So what made you decide to pursue a career in law enforcement, and why did you choose the Rockford Police Department?
You know, I always admired, as a kid, seeing the beat cops that used to walk downtown Rockford. And downtown Rockford was a huge industrial city. But we'd go downtown and, you know, the big buildings, and you see those guys in uniforms. And I just, like, looked up to those guys. And as I grew up, you know, growing up in Southwest Rockford, what they call Little Mexico, I found that that was my calling because I wanted to do better for my community. When I left my military service, I applied, and I was selected. I was the number 2 guy or 3 guy on the list, but I had a calling, and I knew as a kid that that's what I wanted to do. And it's funny because I worked with another kid I went to grade school who ended up being a police officer, and he recalled me talking about it in class as in grade school, saying how I wanted to be a police officer. He goes, damn, man, you did it. I remember that time in class that you said you wanted to be a police officer, and you absolutely did it. And so I knew early on.
That's awesome. So describe the Rockford Police Department for me a little bit. How big is it? You know, what different units does it have within it?
You know, at the time when I was serving, and, you know, and mind you, I had, you know, various roles there, but Rockford at the biggest was 315 officers. The city of Rockford back then was 150,000 people, and we had the Rock River that split the city in half. But as far as units within the department, we had the 3 beats: day shift patrol, afternoon shift patrol, and night shift patrol. But then we had 2 other supplemental units or patrol units that were cover shifts. You know, and they would cover those weird hours, the high crime hours. But, you know, amongst that, we had our, in investigations, you had general crime, you had violent crimes, you had kitty crimes, you had forgery or banking, financial crimes. And then on the patrol side, you had an ATV unit, a bike unit, the community policing unit. Now we have a rock unit, a rock house unit where the officers live in the neighborhoods. And so there were a lot of different units. Then specialized units, you had SWAT, you had a hostage negotiating team, you had what they call the street crimes unit, the TAC unit, and you also had the what am I know I'm missing one. The housing unit, and then you also had the school, resource officers unit. And I know I'm missing. It was pretty. We had a wide variety of different roles that an officer could, set as a goal and move towards in that direction during their career.
So the SWAT team was it solely Rockford PD, or were there other municipalities?
Solely Rockford PD. We had about 30 guys on our SWAT unit, and half of those guys, or I would say a third of those guys, were specialized, in the sniper section, and then the rest of the guys were part of the entry team and containment teams and whatnot. But it was pretty intense. We had, a ton of specialized gear, and we were pretty fortunate because at the time we had had several police chiefs that truly believed in the SWAT role, and so we could get just about anything we wanted.
That's great. So you complete the hiring process, and you go to the academy. Where'd you go, and what's that experience like?
It's funny because growing up in Southwest Rockford, it wasn't the best neighborhood, and so what I found is I got hired on, and then the academy was at the University of Illinois, a police training institute, and I felt it was easy. I got out of service July of 1990 and got hired on March of 91. During my service, during deployment, in combat, I got fragged with a grenade. So I was still somewhat recovering because I got fragged with a grenade in December of 89 and was able to get out. I didn't get out medically. I was able to ETS. But I had some work that I had to do. And so the entire time that I got out, I was working on my body, working on staying fit and whatnot. So then I got hired, and the academy just wasn't hard. I was still physically fit. In service, I had a Filipino staff sergeant, and so we did a lot of Filipino martial arts. So my DT stuff was really good. I had wrestling experience, so that whole part of DT of the academy wasn't hard at all. The critical thinking part, in the military, they make you a critical thinker, so I didn't find it real challenging. Now I get that the state test, that was kind of difficult, and there was a lot of stress, but I was able to make it, and so I was very fortunate.
So you successfully complete the academy, and then you go to the Rockford Police Department. Do you remember that first day, maybe your first week, what that was like for you?
Yeah, man. You're talking, I was a cop in the 90s, early 90s, and it was one of these where you're told, hey, shut up, sit down, and don't say anything unless you're spoken to. And so guys would just give you the business, man, from the minute you walked in until the minute you left. And I was fortunate. I had great field training officers, man. I had Jeff Stovall, who's probably, in my opinion, one of the best violent crimes investigators that I've ever met. And then Theo Glover, who is just one of the best community policing guys that I've ever met. He's still the chief for the Rockford Park District Police Department. I wonder when that guy's going to retire. And then Renee Pitts, Dane Pearson. I had great FTOs, and so it made me the best. It gave me the best possible chance to become the best possible City of Rockford officer.
So what was field training like for you? Any memorable experiences during your training?
It's funny because that very first week, of field training, And Rockford was a very violent town, and if you were back in the '90s, man, we had, I think, one year we had 32 shootings and or 32 homicides, and that's just the homicide. And the homicide isn't really the true number for how violent a city is, but it's the shootings. But we had just the astronomicals. But that very first week, we respond to a shooting down in the projects, and we roll up as the guys run, because we were close by. We roll up as the guy with the gun is running away, and I'm in a foot chase, and I split from my field training officer, and ended up taking the guy down at gunpoint. And luckily it all worked out. The guy complied. He dropped his gun because I had that look like I was going to kill you, and so he drops his gun, gets down on the ground, and Jeff runs up behind him, puts the handcuffs on him. You get him all, put away in the squad car, and he turns to me and goes, "Thank God you didn't shoot that guy. Thank God it worked out, because this is week one." And I'm like, yeah, and I was like, oh shit, this is for real.
Yeah. That'd have been crazy. So let me ask you, so did you ever end up encountering anyone in a law enforcement capacity that you grew up with? Did anything like that ever happen?
I've had to arrest family members. That was a hard road initially. I had a family member that ended up arresting for domestic violence, and it's one of these for domestic battery, or domestic assault, depending on where you live at. But it's one of these incidents where you have to set your feelings aside and think, hey, I had to sell him on it. I'm like, listen, let me help you here. And I want you to think about it like this. I know I'm your cousin, all right? And we've hung out and we've done things together. But in this particular case, I'm going to have to put handcuffs on you. And you're going to hate me for it. But I want you to think about it like this, that if I turn around and decide I'm not going to do this, there's going to be other guys that are walking in, knowing your temper, you're going to fight them, and you're going to get caught up in a felony charge, and you're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your family, and you're just going to lose the lifestyle that you have. So let me help you. I want you to just go with me, because no one wins. And this way, spend the night or two in jail, pay your bond, and get out, and you start all over again. Then I can help you after that.
Yeah.
So friends, I had to do the same thing, same speech. I had to sell them on it, and but that's life, though. Because at that point they have to respect that I'm in an official capacity working as a City of Rockford police officer, and I have a job to do.
So, did your relationship with your cousin survive that arrest?
Yes, it did.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it did, because he understood. He knew he was going to throw punches. He was so sold on it that I'm going to fight these guys. And after that, he was like, "Hey, you're right, man." At the time, he was working at a really good job, and and he could take burn time off. But if he's staying there on a felony charge, he's going to lose that job.
Yeah.
And he didn't have the money to pay at the time for a felony bond.
Yeah.
So
give me that 30,000 foot perspective of your career, kind of that overview of your time with Rockford, and how you ended up over at the county after you retired from Rockford P.D.
I was wanting to become an officer as a kid, but I ended up, when I joined Rockford P.D., everyone starts in patrol, and once you're in patrol, then you have aspirations of moving up, and so, but I stayed in patrol, for like the first 5 years, and during that time, I was able to, because of my ability to speak Spanish, work other roles to help out in investigations or other incidents that required Spanish speaking. So I had that I was assisting on. At the time they were asking for beat cops. I had gotten divorced coming out of the military, and I had custody of my son and my daughter, and I felt that let me back up. Rockford had this really terrible working schedule. And so you worked a swing shift. You worked a month of day shift, and then you went and meet for 30 days for a month, and then you worked another month of night shift, and then you worked another month of afternoons, and it had been like that forever. And it was taking its toll on guys' health. And so and I was starting to feel it. And so they started asking for volunteers to work the beat cop unit, and nobody wanted to work beat cop because you're hot, you're walking. And so I was like, hey, for my family life, for my kids, I'll do that. I'll become a beat cop. Well, then they started transitioning us from beat cops to bike cops or mountain bike cops. And I was fortunate enough to say, hey, you're going to be a community policing officer on a bike unit. And it was a great experience, rolling, putting in, 40 miles a day on a mountain bike, going all over the city of Rockford. And it was great, man. There were days where people were like, you're in this neighborhood and you compliment somebody on their barbecue. Hey, man, that smells great. They'd be like, hey, why don't you come over here and join us? And some guys were reluctant, but I was like, why not? I'll come over there. And I'd sit down at the table and share a meal. And it was probably the best thing that I did because I created so many contacts doing that. But was doing that, then got into a little bit of a jam with my career where I got disciplined for an incident. And it was during that incident that I thought, this is wrong. I got invited to become a member of the union board by the union president at the time, or one of the board members, Doug Block, who ultimately became a great union president for our department. But I ended up joining in the union board, so I was there for a while. Once I got on SWAT, they started, and I was able to demonstrate my shooting abilities. They invited me to become a firearms instructor, so I did the firearms instructor thing, and then in service training, they're like, "Holy shit, this guy's good with his hands and his personal weapons, his legs and his hands." They'd be invited me to become a DT instructor, control tactics instructor, and then everything after that followed. But then I was promoted on merit to the training unit, and then once in the training unit, specialized in other areas of instruction, kind of verbal judo, community diversity. What else was there? Just a wider def tech ammunition, or def tech munitions, OC, taser instructor, less lethal shotgun instructor, baton instructor, and then Rockford had the ability to say, hey, we want you to be the best instructor. Find a course or two, book that training, and we'll send you. And so I was able to travel and learn from some of the best guys around. And so I was very fortunate there. Did the training unit and then assisted on investigations in that because of status. And then what else did I'm leaving stuff out, man. There's just so many.
It's a long
areas.
career. It's hard
is.
to capture everything.
On the union side of it, at the same time, well, the union partnered with the city, and where we started seeing a lot of guys having a hard time with trauma and stuff that they'd experienced. And so the union asked myself, and there was another officer, Vernon Sins, who was also a detective, and he's like, hey, let's put together this peer-to-peer support unit. And we co-chaired it, we shared it, and then but put together that unit, and it was great, man. We would respond to shootings or traumatic incidents and address the needs of officers, or an officer was having a hard time off duty. I remember responding to a call from a wife where my husband took over some pills in an event to try to overdose. And it's one of these calls where where I'm racing as fast as I can get to the officer's house, find him there, not very responsive. and load him in my squad and drive him to Wisconsin for treatment. Because in Illinois, they would have the hospital would have reported to the state, and they would have taken away his ability to remain as an officer. So that was kind of our way to get around. And was it risky? Yeah, because you never knew the officer may code or something may happen, but it was worth the risk for us at the time, you know. So incidents like that. So I mean, Rockford was a great place to be a police officer.
So let me ask you about the bike patrol unit. So you said that you chose the beat officer,
Yes.
walking the beat and everything. Did you choose that because was it set hours and set days?
Yes, it was the beat officer was. We still had a day shift and a night shift, but no, the afternoon guys that were working the beat. There's guys that liked working afternoons and working those beats because, you know, they were retired on the job and they knew that the beat cop was never going to go hungry. He was never going to get cold, and he was never going to get wet, you know. Yeah. And so those guys would go from building to building to building to building. And but I was fortunate enough to have a day shift slot, and it was a great experience, man. You know, west side of the river versus east side of the river, you know, and I was just very fortunate and I wanted it because of the set hours for my ability to raise my son and daughter at the time.
So when you look back at your career, what do you consider to be some of the high points of your career? Some of the accomplishments that you're the most proud of?
Oh man, you know, so I ended up getting a couple of letters of recommendation and then a couple of awards, my one award, you know, was for our training unit. We were going through what do you call it now? I can't even remember. We were getting compliant with the state on
state accreditation.
State accreditation, and they're like, "Hey, we need this," and my supervisor at the time, Sarah Aarons. She really was a good supervisor, and I love her to death, man. She really was one of these individuals that kept you on task. But as a unit, we were able to achieve a standard, and a high standard at that, and we were recognized for our efforts. You know, I got an award from the city for that was called the Latino of Distinction Award, and for some of the work that I had done within the community, and so I'm really proud of that award, of receiving it. And during that time, as a police officer, I ended up also receiving a Father of the Year award from the Ethnic Heritage Museum, or one of the agencies there in Rockford, because as a single father, I was taking my kids everywhere. And then when this thing, and I don't even know how I was nominated, but I was nominated, and I think my kids nominated me. But those are the Latino distinction, the accreditation, and then the Father of the Year. Those are my three high points, you know.
So you did spend some time in patrol before you went on to the beat, and even in investigations, there's the opportunity to make some traffic stops. Is there a traffic stop or stops that kind of stand out in your mind?
Yeah, man. I was on patrol in Southwest Rockford, down near what they call Morgan Street Park and Central Avenue and Morgan Street, and it's one of these where I'm going one direction and the other car is coming not opposite of me, but they're coming from the side, and it's one of these where you look over and they're like this. They won't even acknowledge you, and so I'm like, okay, and so I'm waiting, and I'm like, you go. And they go and they hook a left in front of me. They stay in front. At that point, they're like, I'm sure that he turned in front of me because he knew that if I go straight, he's going to turn. And I think it was one of these where I'll make a left, and then he made a left, and then he made a second left. And so I follow him behind him. And when he made his second left, he just no turn signal, so I pull him down. And at the time, I was a big practitioner of verbal judo. I really believed in it, and because I felt it was a way to disarm individuals. Because everybody always said, "Why'd you stop me? Why'd you stop me?" And then I greeted, "Hey, good morning. My name is Officer DeLaRosa. The reason I'm pulling you over is you failed to turn, put a turn signal here when you turn left." And the question of why, I'm like, "Do you have your driver's license? Do you have your insurance?" And there's one guy here. It's like a little Subaru wagon. There's an older Subaru wagon. I think it was a Subaru. I don't remember. It's a little mini type wagon. But there's this angry freaking pit bull tied to this tire in the back area of this little wagon, and it's just hitting the window. And I'm like, "Hey man, just relax. I know your dogs. I just need your driver's license, your insurance." And when I said insurance, the passenger opens up the glove compartment, and out falls a magazine, bullets and stuff, and my gun comes out. I've got it pressed against the guy's head. I'm like, "Hey, listen, if you have a gun on you, don't fucking move. Don't move. Keep your hands on the wheel. Passenger, grab the windshield." And I'm like, "Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna wait for my backup, and then I'm gonna get you guys out one at a time." By now, the pit bull is sensing that these guys are nervous, and it's really going off. And so I call for backup. I call for animal control, and I'm like, "Hey, we're gonna get you guys out. Once my backup comes, they're gonna get you out one at a time. But let me guarantee you that if you make the wrong move, passenger, you're going to be wearing his brains. Understand what I'm telling you." And I said it in a manner that made them believe that I would do that. And the guy's like, "Oh, don't put his brains on me. Don't put his brains on." And the driver's like, "Don't shoot me, man. Don't shoot me." And I'm like, "Hey, I'm not going to shoot you, man. But I want to make sure that I go home and we're all done at the end of my shift. And so I just need you to keep your hands where I tell you to keep them." And backup comes, we get the guys out. Animal control comes, we get it. And sure shit, they had a gun in there, had a little bit of, had a little 8 ball and make the arrest. And, but that was one of those incidents where like, oh shoot, that could have gone sideways real quick, And, but it's one of these where guys, they get so nervous that they themselves set themselves up for failure, But there's, that was probably my most memorable traffic stop.
What about any incidents, maybe a call that you responded to or a case you investigated? I mean, if you got more than one, have at it.
As far as like the incidents that stay with you, there's so many horrible incidents, and my three tops events, I guess I'll call them that. We responded to one of the housing areas, or is an apartment area, whatever you want to call it. And it was for a baby not breathing, and so we get there, and it's another officer, James Gully, and he's like just steps in front of me, running into this apartment building, and we both get in there, and there's this lady has this infant who's just limp in her arms. And James looks at me, I grab that baby, and I immediately start doing CPR on this kid. And it's just, and I'm going, and it seems like an eternity before fire gets there, and they take him from me. And it's one of these stories, and it's one of these buildings where they got the brick walls around, and the boyfriend and girlfriend had been in a dispute. Takes the baby from the girlfriend, and he just throws it against the wall. And we ended up arresting him later on, and because she ended up covering for him initially, but the baby didn't make it. And even today, man, as I'm telling my story, and the kid was bleeding from the mouth and the nose area, and I can still taste, or I can like taste this kid, and it's so weird. Because it happened like many years ago. Yeah. The other story that stays is the kid stories, man. The other story is, we're on patrol in a house fire, and And county officer responds, and it was right on the border of and this West Rockford, and a county officer. It's right on the border of what we would say city limits and county. And so I hear that at the time it was an officer by the name of Randy Peraza. He's responding. County Officer DeVinte's responding, and then myself. And we get there, and this house is just engulfed, and this lady's outside saying, my baby's inside. And we're like, holy shit, we're running in this house, and smoke is billowing out the front door, and the top part of the house is, just caught. And so we make entry, and we're on our hands and knees, and and she had said, and my baby's in the back bedroom, and man, it seems like forever to get to this back bedroom, but there's no vision, man, because it's like black smoke. And I get to the finally get to the back bedroom, and I'm moving around, trying to feel for this kid. It's hot and stuff, and I can't find him. And I'm like taking in this smoke, and I don't remember if I broke out this window or opened it up. I ended up jumping out a top window, and it was, and I hit the ground, and I'm coughing, and I'm checking, and the other two officers, they were already outside, and they're like, hey, we didn't find him. You didn't find him. I'm like, no. And I'm like, I'm going to go back in. And about that time, all the windows blow out because it's bad. And when they blew out there, those guys are like, hey, you're not going back in. And at that time, the fire department gets here, and they're like, hey, why'd you go in? This is a recovery. This isn't a rescue. This is a recovery. There's no way. And then I start throwing up, and I can't catch my breath, and then I got admitted to the hospital. And at the hospital, the doctor's like, hey, why'd you do that? And I'm like, man, there was a kid in there. And he goes, you're in bad shape, kid. And he's like, I can't tell you if you're going to be okay right now. We'll have to see how the day goes for you. Because we're going to keep you. And it was a hard pill. And it was one of those hard pills where, like, fuck, man, I may not make it through this. But if this is how the Lord takes me, then I'm okay with it, And it was one of those moments where, like, shit, I had to come to terms with whatever may happen, Mm-hmm. And I've always said, man, I don't want to be that guy that's fucking crying, asking for more time. I've had my last rites read to me in combat, and it sucks. But I think that if you believe 100% in what you're doing, then you go, and you go to and meet your maker, whoever that may be, and I was okay with that, And it sucks to think like that, but I truly believed in my profession. And, oh man, there's another incident. At the time, I had a chief who was very, in this part of my career, I had a chief that was very problematic. Rockford Police went through a really hard 10 years with a terrible chief. And in that time, when I decided I was a union president at that time, and ended up, because I was tired, not running again as a union president, and I got demoted. And so I opted to go to the night shift. And in that time, I got demoted, and it was just retribution on his part for the heartaches that I gave him. But I got demoted, and the city knew that I was going to come back. Ultimately, I got re-promoted because we ended up losing. That chief went away, got a new chief, and the new chief's like, hey, come see me, Patrick Hoy. And he was like, hey, he was the interim chief. He goes, hey, we're going to re-promote you. And so I got my investigators back. But during that time that I was demoted, I was in patrol with with my co-chair from community policing, and he had opted to leave investigations because he wanted to get back to a more normal schedule. For he ended up becoming a pastor, I think, and so we're working night shift, and we hear a call of a stolen car out, and we weren't far, and so he's like, "Hey, let's go to this." I'm like, "Okay," so we end up finding this car. We're in a small car chase. The car crashes, and out I go in a foot chase, and end up catching this guy. And the suspect at the time had a gun tucked in his waistband, and when I caught him, I ended up shoving him from behind because he was going to jump into a fence. But I shoved him into it, wrapped him, and when I wrapped him, you teach guys, hey, the hands will hurt you, the hands will hurt you. And from behind, I had this one hook and then one inside grab, and he was trying to take his hand and bring it to his waist, and I was pushing behind him, so I was really pinning his body against. And about that time, I spun him. I started to load him on my hip, and so I have pretty extensive background in martial arts. Because I've dabbled in or trained in judo, sambo. I have a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I have a black belt in what they call Brazilian luta libre, which is no-gi jiu-jitsu, I guess, if you want to, and then an extensive background in Filipino martial arts. But I go to toss this guy in his head, and about that time the cavalry comes, and the one officer does the WWE where he jumps up in the air and wham. And this guy was loaded on my hip and my shoulder. So when the officer jumped, he landed on my shoulder, and it blew my shoulder out. And it took me a year to come back from that injury. But afterwards, guys were like, "Why didn't you just shoot the guy in the middle of the night?" I'm like, here's what came through my mind. Had I released them, I would have had to gone from here to here to here, and he was already there. He was going to go like this, and all I could imagine then was being shot in the fucking groin area and bleeding out in the latter part of my career, dying in a dark alley in Rockford. That just didn't appeal to me. So it was easier to stay connected to him because then I knew where his hands were than to let him go and then try to shoot him. And so those are like the three that stay with me all the time, man. And at times I think back, man, maybe I just should, because I struggle today. I need a new shoulder, and I think that at times I think, man, you should have just shot that guy. But should I have taken his life for the stolen car? Because I don't know that he would have shot me. I believe he would have shot me. I know he would have shot me, but I just don't think that I could have gone on target to hit him. And in my luck, I would have been hitting the pelvic region, and I would have bled to death. And I don't know, those stay with me.
So have you ever done something during the course of your career? It could be a call, it could be something administrative, it could be something that's disciplinary in nature, where later you realized, that wasn't the best idea.
Yeah. I threw away, I guess if you want to call it, I threw away a piece of property that I should have tagged in because I was just lazy and I got disciplined for it. And it's one of these, sometimes we work hard to get fucking rid of shit where it's just easier to fucking just tag it into evidence and or do it per policy, and it saves you a lot of headache, and on that particular one I should have known better, but I was trying not to get more work for myself, and the thing is that on our log sheet, it wasn't uncommon to have 18 to 20 entries on our log sheet because Rockford was busy, and so having those days where you had short entries on your, those happened, but they were, not as often as you wanted them. So yeah, I should have known better.
What about an incident where you wish you could get a do-over? I know it's closely related to that previous question, but maybe there's something from the tactical side of things, or maybe just how you interacted with a person and it just went south on you, where you wish you could get that back and do it over again because you could do it better.
Oh man, there. I want to say that in the front part of my career, I would say that I would give people tickets based on attitude, and I wish I could have done those over, because later on in my career, I didn't give tickets for attitude, and guys are like, well, that guy was a fucking asshole. I'm like, you know what, man, I should already know when I'm walking up whether I'm going to give this guy an attitude or not. Ticket or not. And at that point, I was able to win people over when they gave me attitude and say, hey, you know what? I was going to give you a break. I'm going to give you a break. You gave me a headache, and I want you to know that this interaction, I don't even want to be if I met you later on in life, I don't even want to be your friend because you were such an ass. And I'd given them this roadside lecture and then let them go. And the thing is that you run into people off duty, and it's one of these where like, fuck, I wish that I would have known that trick early on in my career because it serves me better. And here's a story that I will share with you on that. I was working off duty because everybody works off duty. And at this place called Uncle Nick's in downtown Rockford, this is the one restaurant with a bar closing everybody goes to. And so I'm working at Uncle Nick's, and there's a line of people, to order their food and whatnot. And this group of guys shows up. They show up on motorcycles, and they get in line, and they start roughhousing people. And I go over there, and I'm like, hey, you guys need to settle down, all right? Take your place in line, or leave. And the one guy stands in front of me, and he's like, what are you going to do? And there's like 4 or 5 guys. They start to flank on me, and I hear, we got your back, Officer DeLaRosa. And there's like 10, 12 guys that are standing there, and they're like reaching underneath. And now these guys are like, oh shit, we're about to get into a huge fight. And I'm like, no. And I'm hoping that whoever's reaching underneath their shirt doesn't have a gun. And I'm like, because I don't want a gunshot. I don't want a shooting in this parking lot. And these guys make it back to the motorcycles. They get on and they take off. And that's when I knew, man, this is the right thing to do. And for me, it was treat people like you'd want your family to be treated. And so, and I really lived by that. And the guys would call me Dr. Phil, and they're like, man, you just start talking to people, man. And I'm like, dude, sometimes it's the best way, just many times people are going to argue with you, and you have to find out what's the underlying cause of that fight. Like the husband and wife domestics, he's always drinking and this and that. Well, is she arguing because he's drinking, or is she arguing because she wants to spend more time with him? Mm-hmm. And so I'd say to them, we get called these domestics. I'm like, man, I'm embarrassed to be here. And they'd be like, we're embarrassed to have you here. I'm like, I look around and you guys have a nice home. I mean, for where you're at, you have a nice home. And I can tell that you guys are working hard. You were working all morning. You're working all night. And I get it. You want more time with him. And I get it. He wants a little bit of man time, and I get it. But you guys have to figure out how to meet in the middle, and people, and it was funny because I'd find that middle ground, and guys were like, man, this Dr. Phil shit that you do. But and at times it's deciphering through everything that is going on in their personal life. And which is why as a police officer, you wear the different hats, teacher, carpenter, plumber, electrician, babysitter, it's all a counselor, it's all that, and it's just knowing how to communicate with people.
So, quick side question. In Rockford, were you required to live in town?
In the beginning, we were. required to live in town. And I chose never to leave Rockford, and because I had this mindset that no one can patrol my city like I can patrol my city. I still have friends and family that live here, and if I'm on patrol, they're safer because I'm on patrol. And it's funny because I got, guys will follow you home, and I was followed home one day and made it inside, and at the time I had a Z28 Camaro, and they shot my windshield out. And I call in, the officer comes out, and she's like, "Hey, that's fucked up, man. I'd be really pissed." And she's like, "But you're laughing about it." And I'm like, "Yeah, I am laughing about it." She's like, "Why are you laughing? I'd be pissed." And I'm like, "Because I wasn't sitting in the car. That's why I'm laughing. They missed me." And so, which, kind of lends later on in my career, like, why would I, when the chief calls me, "Hey, I want to see you," right in 2007, January, the chief at the time calls me and he goes, "Hey, I want to pull you from training. I want you to go I want you to go to gangs or narcotics. I want you to do something different." And at the time, thinking back, I'm like, these are different times. And I really am not going to be doing trash pulls. I'm not going to be following these young gangbangers, rolling up on them. I'm like, nah, that's a young man's. At the time, I started thinking, man, you got 26 years. What's the magic number? I walked back in March, handed him my letter of intent to retirement, and in May, I pulled the plug.
So was your training assignment, was that a full-time gig in the training
Full-time
unit?
trainer.
Nice.
I was a full-time trainer. It was awesome. We'd go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be done at 4 o'clock, or 5 o'clock, depending on whether or not I took a paid lunch, or not, but or an unpaid lunch or whatever. And it was a great gig because in training, man, we'd go sharpen our firing skills. We'd go do. Rockford was a great place. I mean, at the time we had the one thing that I regret, being on the union board, we should have fought harder to keep our police department as one, because we separated it as 3 different buildings, which is now in Rockford 4 buildings. And now we see the aftermath of that. They've seen the aftermath where guys don't know each other, and you've lost that camaraderie. But the headquarters building that I was in, we had a shoot house there. And so we had constructed a shoot house where we could move the different walls. And so we would do a lot of our SWAT training in that shoot house. We'd have DEA come, FBI come, marshals, other surrounding agencies just to use our facilities there. And so we'd go and we'd train. We do a lot of, Rockford was really big. We were really big on scenario-based training, and we would hood our guys. And we started using the hood drill probably, I retired in 17. We started using the hood drill back in 2012, I think. And it was just completely different. We'd hood drill our guys. We'd lay them down, cover them. We'd pull the hood off, shoot them, and I mean, as real as you could get it. And but yeah, full-time great gig. It was a freaking great gig, man. Because I got to travel all over to get my accreditation or my certifications. I went to one of the funniest stories I'll share with you is going to the ARCO Academy in the Fort Lauderdale area. And ARCO is they put out OC, CS, different gases. But during this academy, the 5 days we're there, I think we're there 5 days. Every day you're getting gassed, and it sucks, man. But on one day we got hit with a OCCS blend, and it just hurt bad. And and even after the effects subsides. And in Florida, it's humid. You would start to sweat, and that burn would just come back. And we're pulling to the Hyatt or wherever we were staying. I can't remember the hotel. And there's this outdoor pool. There's people in. And I turned to my training partner, Mike Dahlke. I'm like, dude, I'm just jumping into the pool. He goes, don't do that. There's families in there. And into the pool I went, trying to get this stuff off of me, man.
Oh. But let me ask you, would you rather take a 5-second
I'd rather
discharge from a taser?
You know,
or
being
OC?
having been a taser instructor, and I was a taser instructor for once I went into training. I was a taser instructor for a majority of my career. So when we do scenario-based training, we'd be doing tasing all the time, and at times you had for new kid training, one of us would ride the lightning, you know.
Yeah.
And so I've been tased multiple times, you know, and I would rather be tased than OC'd any day of the week.
I'm with you on that one, man. That OC, it lasts too long.
Oh, too
It was
long,
way
man.
too long, man.
You know, I remember.
You can take a normal shower after getting tased, but you
Yeah,
you gotta like shower in your underwear.
Especially you early on. So we went through the aerosol to the foam to what's the other version?
Yeah, the stream.
The stream, and you know, the foam and the aerosol, they'd get all over and there would be remnants in your hair. You'd get home, you'd shower, and all of a sudden that stuff would drip down and it'd be like, oh my God. It was horrible, horrible, you know.
Although I remember last time I was teaching a tase class and I was like, I don't want to get tased no more. So I took a drive stun, and after that I was like, that's it, I'm done. I am not doing that. Just drive stun right in the calf. And I was like, I thought that wouldn't be as bad, but it
hurts. It all hurts.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, at times you have to come to terms with which level of pain do I want today?
That's exactly it, man. That's exactly it. So you spent a lot of time on SWAT. Are there any memorable SWAT activations that come to mind when you think back?
Yeah, we had one barricaded subject, and you know, initially we used to dynamic everything and dynamic, and it wasn't until later on that we started thinking, you know, what's the propensity for the loss of life, or what's the probability? And we had to think, you know what, let's slow down. And so we'd sit and wait, call people out, and but on one call, we're all staging nearby, and we ended up, the hostage negotiators get the guy to call out, and we come up on the guy, and he's got the red beams. He's like, I'm about to die, don't kill me. and that was one that stays with me. But I mean, and you know, those SWAT calls were cool, but being in, we used to assist with our narcotics unit, making the narcotic raids, and those were cool. So it was a combined teams of DEA, narcotics, or DEA and patrol, and our narcotics unit. But I remember on one call there, I was like the second guy on the stick, or getting ready to go in, and third guy, because the ram guy punches the door, first guy, second guy, and the officer in front of me, he does a brief halt and he turns, and there's this pit bull midair, and I just extend out, pop him, boom, and the dog just does a 180, boom, lands there, and we're like, push, go. We get through the house, and that one, you know, those I was known for shooting dogs all the time, and I didn't want to, but you had these pit bulls, and mind you, in the 90s, man, with crack cocaine, everyone had pit bulls, everyone had Rottweilers, and so those were, you know, pretty bad. I do want to share another story relating to a dog. I got called to a dog bite, and or dog biting, attacking a lady, and when I get there, it was the lady's own dog, and what happened was, this pit bull has punctured this lady's abdomen, and he's just latched on here, and she's trying to get him off, and she's standing next to her house, and I run over, and he's not letting go, he's here, and so I'm like, hey, don't move. I pin her with my forearm against the building, and now this dog is like, and he's still latched on, and he's looking at me. I take my gun out, angle it into his eye, and pop him, boom, and the dog falls off and he's dead. And this lady's like, oh my God. Well, man, she ends up filing a complaint with my department because I had killed her pet. And if you were to do a history search of the Rock River Times, I think it's the newspaper there, you'd see this article, officer shoots dog, and she was complaining that damn dog was a family pet. She ended up going to the ER, walked out against medical advice, and then became septic because of her injuries.
Wow. Yeah.
And at the time, I was like, serves her well. Oh my God, man. It was crazy. But that was the guys were like, I can't believe you took that shot. They're like, what if it would have bounced off her head and hit her? I'm like, man, I knew with my angulation on that dog that he was going to fall. I had another call where and mind you, in the neighborhood in central West Rockford, it was really violent crime area, but they were dog fighting, and we get called a dog fighting, and sure shit, there's like 100 people out. And myself, I had another one or two officers with, and I'm like, hey, whose dogs? And these dogs are just entangled, and there's blood everywhere. Whose dogs? And no one's answering. I take my gun and whack, 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 whack. And they're like, oh, my dog. Arrest him and arrest him. Oh, shit. And that's how we knew the owners, man. We hooked them up and arrested them for dog fighting. Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah. Like, well, how you're not going to rehabilitate those dogs?
No, I agree.
And guys are like, holy crap, how did you just did that? I'm like, yeah, I just did that. I remember showing up to another domestic in Southwest Rockford, and there's this dog chasing this guy around this car, and the guy jumps up in the car, and I pull up, and I was responding to a domestic. And so as soon as I get on my car, the dog looks at me. He starts coming at me. Boom, pop him. And there he lays. And I'm like, it just left him there. And I walk over to this. I asked the guy, hey, whose dog is it? He goes, belongs in that house. And so I want to knock on the door. Hey, you own a Pitbull? And they're like, yeah. Is that him over there? Oh, yeah. What's wrong with him? I'm like, I just shot him. Go handle my domestic and then handle they're shooting with that dog. And I'm like, oh my God, man. Just crazy shit like that, I
might have to call your episode DeLaRosa the Dog Whisperer or something, man. Holy fuck.
It's funny. We had, everybody in Rockford had pit bulls. And the other side of the coin is I would grab pit bulls off the street all the time, loose dogs. And I'd walk up, and they're like, hey, how you gonna? And I always, because I carried leashes with me, and I'd fucking snag a dog here and there, throw him in the back of my car, call animal control, or run him out there. And it was a good thing for me because I ended up adopting 2 Rottweilers that belonged to, at the time, to Carl Fort. And those Rottweilers were his drug house dogs. But he had imported these dogs from Germany. The guy had so much money, and they were great dogs for me, man. Wow. Bear, he was with me until he died, and the other dog I ended up giving to another police officer buddy of mine. But at the time, those dogs were young enough that I was able to rehabilitate them.
So what do your bosses say? Because they got to be like, oh shit, he shot another dog. Do the bosses ever?
No, I had great bosses, man, and they're like, well, why'd you do it? I'm like, because the dog was going to bite me, and it's either time off work or it's a pet that's loose that it was going to bite this other person. And so it worked out for me, it's kind of like OC. When we first got OC, I was that guy, man, that they said, hey, verbal non-compliance, you OC him. Hey, you're going, put your hands behind your back. No. There was no second warning. I freaking OC'd so many people when we first got it. I was like, hey, give him a second warning. Like, okay. But no,
But I mean, you bring up a good point with the dogs. Look, if somebody's going to shoot you, you don't have to get shot first before you shoot them,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
So if a dog's going to bite you, you don't got to let it bite you
No.
before you protect yourself. Yeah.
But I've handled those calls, where little kids have been mauled.
Yeah.
There was one lady in Rockford that she got mauled by her 3 dogs. And I used to keep pictures back then, take pictures, but I had those pictures, and it's like the flesh got pulled from her bones from these dogs biting her. And there's like no way, man. There's no way that I did catch a dog bite one time on my hand, and I had to shove my hand into that dog. But a lot of the knowledge that I received, or that I was able to gain from dogs, were because of my own personal dogs. I had what they call presa canarios, the canary dogs. They're like mastiffs that look like pit bulls on steroids. And I would assist a guy in the Rockford area who came from Chicago, Dave Schnitt, and he's an awesome dog trainer, but he trained my dogs for obedience and protection. And so I could tell if a dog's entire tail was going, friendly dog. If the tip of the tail is going, it's going to be an aggressive dog. He's high prey, and but over my years, I've had everything from my own Belgians to the Pressas to Rottweilers to, and I have 4 dogs here, but, I love dogs.
Yeah.
But not all people are meant to have dogs, because we've met those guys that are feeding their dogs gunpowder to make them more vicious, and they just hurt dogs.
Hold on. People, what do you mean by that? Feed their dogs gunpowder?
Back then, I was part of had an investigation where we busted up a dog fighting ring, and I testified as an expert witness in dog behavior, and but there were guys. They would create a box and they would put these pit bulls in there, and and they would give dogs gunpowder, and the gunpowder would just mess with the dogs, or it would hype up the dog's aggression, and because it's killing them,
Wow, I've never heard that.
Oh yeah,
wow.
And it was just crazy, man. Other guys would give their dogs steroids, to make them, horse steroids to make them bigger, and it's just crazy the things that some of these dog fighters do. And some of these guys, I mean, they make a living doing this because they have their own suture kits for their dogs, and their own antibiotics for their dogs. And you want to say, good for those guys, but it's bad,
Yeah.
But they make a ton of money off these dogs.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. There was a case that you brought up, or an incident that you brought up, and I don't think that we talked about it. A father with a baby.
Yeah,
and a knife.
a father with a baby with a knife.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And so we get called to the projects there right on College Avenue. And it was one of these nights. It's a Friday night. And there's this father, they're having a domestic, and he's got this baby, and he's got a knife. I'm going to kill him. I get back, or I'm going to kill him. And it was myself, Simon Solis. I can't remember and being a SWAT guy, I'm, part of me, my brain is saying, hey, let's set up a perimeter, barricaded subject, hostage rescue type deal. And at times, like, man, it's Friday. It's been a long fucking Friday. I'm like, Simon, you guys keep talking to this guy. I'll be right back. And I was able to go flank all the way around. And projects, they don't lock their doors, man. A lot, back then they didn't, because there, a lot of foot traffic. But I was able to come to the back door, open up the door, and I'm able to sneak into the house. And I had taken my baton, I opened it up, and this guy is there, and I just went over his head and popped him as hard as I could against his carotid. And what he does, he drops the baby, drops the knife, because he reaches back here, and I just suck him down into the ground, and then, put hands on him to make an effective arrest, and guys were like, "You're fucking crazy." I'm like, I didn't want to fucking be here another 10, 12 hours because that's what's going to happen if SWAT comes out, you know? And so that, I'm like, at times I think back, why the hell did I do that, you know? But at the time, it seemed like the right thing to do, you know? Oh, man.
What are some of your best memories?
You know, I have a memory of I had a ride along. And I was a guy that, you know, I just loved to fight at times, you know. And I had this rider with me, and no one wanted riders, you know. And so the ship commander was like, "Hey, who wants to take the rider?" And no one was like raising their hands. And I'm like, "I'll take the rider." And they're like, and I was working what they called Area 2, the Central West Rockford high crime area. It included a project and just a very violent area. And so I got this, and we're going from call to call to call, and this kid's like, "Oh my God, this is what I want to do. I want to be a Rockford officer, and this and that." And all of a sudden we get a call to the east side of town. And he's like, "Hey, Officer DeLaRosa, is there a particular reason why they're calling you to the east side of Rockford?" I'm like, "Nah, they probably want me to translate or something like that." And I pull up, and there's just like a mob of people around this house, and there's patrol guys there. And my supervisor walks over, Sergeant Taylor, and he's like, "Aurelio, I'm going to take he has a sledgehammer. I'm going to take this sledgehammer. I'm going to fucking knock that door down, and I want you to go in there and beat the shit out of that guy." Like, what? And the kid's like, "What did he say?" I'm like, "We're going to hit that door. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to arrest that guy." And long story short, he knocks the door. We, go in and we make an effective arrest. And he goes, and there was a bunch of Mexican people around there, and the kid's like, "I thought you were going to translate." And I'm like, "So did I." Because, as a matter of fact, we did translate, but it was just in a different manner.
Did he ever become a cop? You know, the ride along?
I don't even know, man. I don't even know. Oh, it's like, holy crap.
A lasting impact on him,
Yeah.
I'm sure. That's awesome.
One of the messed up stories, we had a brand new officer, and he's in his probationary period, but we respond to a man with a gun call, and we start into a foot chase, and I'm going one way, the probationer and the officer is going another way, and you're running over backyards between houses, and I'm trying to flank, and the officer and probationer, they split, and the probationer goes on the direction that the bad guy's hiding, and he just did kind of a small way around. He got between in the section of a house where it was hidden, and as he made the corner, he ran right into the muzzle of the bad guy's gun. Boom. And the guy's looking at there, he turns and he takes off running. And that young officer, he was devastated, man. That was a conversation, and he's like, "Hey, I think I'm done. I didn't come out here to die." And as a experienced officer, is one of these, you pull him aside and like, "Hey, man, it's a different job. It's not for everybody. But if you feel in your heart that this isn't for you, it may not be for you. This is gonna be the norm, and there's no shame in walking away. You have a college degree. You can go on to do other things." And there's one kid that we ended up talking out of the job because he was wrecked. It's hard to come back from incidents like that, and so. But that was one of those conversations, and and those conversations had to be had, as well.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting because we've all had those conversations, and I'd be curious to what he ended up doing, because while Rockford may have not been the right place for him, there's other departments out there.
Absolutely, and that was a direction that we took him. And I do want to share another story. It just kind of reminded me. We had a stolen vehicle task force in the city of Rockford. It was a multi-jurisdictional task force, but I can't remember, Brandon Parker, and he's the investigator, and he calls off. He's got a stolen car, and he's watching this guy. Now the guy knows that he's being watched by Brandon, and so when Brandon rolls up on him, and I was he had called off, so I was already on my way. And so Brandon makes an approach from like the front part, and the guy runs Officer Parker over, runs him over, and then hits the road, takes off. I'm pulling in as the guy's taking off, and it was one of these calls where it's like, do I put out I'm putting out that direction. Do I go to Brandon or do I go after the car? And it was one of these where I'm going to go to Brandon because he was messed up, and I think that was the call that he ended up leaving police work because of that. I think he ended up coming back to police work, or he's on the private sector, but he's back in some form. But it was a hard call because he later on in life he was like, hey man, had you not been there, I don't know that I would have made it. It was one of these where, I'm holding his hand and I'm telling him, hey dude, stay with me, stay with me, stay with me, monitoring his vitals. And then luckily Rockford Fire was there. And I want to say like within a mile and a half is a hospital. I believe that there was an ambulance that came right from that had it dropped off, and they came right from there. But he would have died on that because he suffered head trauma, body trauma on that deal. And I totally forgotten about that, man. Those little incidents, they just come back. And he still, today, I see him because he works with a group that they provide security at some of the, in the Rockford area, local MMA venues. And so I have an opportunity to see him. His dad was Al Parker, was another officer. And him and I, we went to ground fighting instructor school. And talk about an intense school. During that week of training, we had several guys that had broken hands or broken fingers or broken ribs, man. And so it was a great experience.
Did the offender in the car eventually?
He ended up getting caught, yes.
He got caught.
So, yeah, he got caught. You can't outrun the radio.
No, you can't.
You can't outrun
Motorola.
No, you can't outrun Motorola. But, I want you to think about it. We would put out about 25 guys on patrol. Rockford would. So you would have, maybe more than that, because at the time we had 2 full-time paddy wagons, and so on each side of the river. And so you'd have your different areas, 2 officers to an area. You had a cover shift, and then on a call like that, everyone is coming. You're not gonna get away. Yeah. You think you're gonna get away, but you're not gonna get away. Someone's gonna catch you.
Yeah.
But and on that call, tempers are high. And because guys are coming with like, they're gonna do everything to take a guy into custody, even if it means, death.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned a lot of names throughout this. Is there anyone or any number of individuals that you look to as a mentor or mentors in your career?
As far as like mentors, my FTOs, even, Jeff Stovall, Theo Glover, Renee Pitts, Dane Pearson, those guys were like I forget, Jim Joyce. Those guys were like, so the OGs, man, they knew everything about patrol that you needed to know. And then as you progressed, they even knew more. They had all that experience, all that knowledge, and you're like, holy crap, I want to be just like them. But like on the mentors, like the guys that I worked on a daily basis with, man, like Mike Dahlke, fucking phenomenal operator. And he, him and I worked real close on the tactical side of it. He ended up, he was one of our tactical leaders. Joel Givens, he was really, I learned a lot about human behavior from Joel. Joel was really a great guy. Sarah Aarons, she was a great supervisor for me. Those are like my standouts, man. As far as like chiefs, Jeff Nielsen, Dominic Aspero. You know, those were like, those were great chiefs, man. Those are the kind of chiefs that go down in history. You know, I totally, you know, there were so much to learn from them. You know, there were those calls where, you know, you're like, hey, this is the course of action we're taking based on the individuals that are here. And I'm not saying that the blue line takes care of the blue line, but there were, you know, there were some people that were arrested that you knew they're going to go out there and they're just going to keep hurting people.
Yeah.
You know, for instance, like it was during my career when Kevin Rice, one of the guys that I served on our union board, he was murdered. And he was murdered by William Buck. And Kevin was a fucking great guy, man. Kevin was, you know, he had a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge. And Kevin would always say, hey, when you respond to a bar fight, you know, give first aid to those that are down and arrest whoever's standing over him or standing by, you know. And but Kevin responded to a suspicious person, and as he rolled up in his undercover car, he rolled the window down. A person addressed him, and William Buck was behind him and shot him in the back of the head. And but William had been arrested previously for the same thing, and he was walking the streets of Rockford. So our judicial system is broken, and there are some people that that should just not be here, you know. And so, yeah, it is what it is, I guess.
So we started at about the same time on the job. Take technology out of it. Okay, there's been so much advancements in technology through the course of our career. What's the biggest change that you've seen aside from technology in the time that you were with the Rockford Police Department?
You know, I will say that in the 90s, and you know, people say, "Oh, there's so much police brutality." Back then, there were elements of the community that feared law enforcement. That fear is no longer there, which is why there is the wild, wild west. And so at the body cams, and you can look at the body cams in two different perspectives. And one, that it catches the officer in the wrong. Two, that it saves the officer from being wrong. But the technology today is, I think, at times hinders the job. You know, and I'm just speaking from being a cop in the 90s, you know, and you know, because the cameras came into play, I want to say 5 years prior to my retirement, but.
So do you think there's an element out there that knows, because that officer has a body camera on, that the bad guy is safe, so they push it and push it?
And they'll push it because they're the criminal element will push the pace, or they'll demonstrate, or they'll show off, or they'll perform for the crowd, you know, for whoever's watching. And it wasn't like that, you know, when I worked. And I'm not the biggest guy, man. You know, I'm 5'6" on a good day, normally 5'5", but you know, and right now I'm a little heavy, about 185, but you know, walking around then at 170, I'd still get the job done, even with the biggest guys, you know. But I think that they're too technology dependent. You can only get the job done at times with boots on the ground, you know, and that's how it has to happen, through that human contact. And so I think that it has made some officers apprehensive to get to know community. And you have to know your community. You know, had I never sat at some of those tables on that Sunday afternoon in those neighborhoods that I did sit in, had I never shared, you know, or, you know, that glass of lemonade or whatever I was offered, you know, with them, I would have never made those contacts, man. And I would have people calling me all the time about different things. And, you know, and it's just part of the job, you know.
Do you think the job had an impact on your family?
Yes.
How so?
I was taught this motto years ago about walking the three dogs, and it was on peer support, and the presenter was from the suburbs. I can't remember, he was a chief somewhere. But so you have the officer, and then you have home, you have administration or the police station, then you have the streets. And when you're out there working, the norm for the officer becomes the street element or the street environment.
Was it Kent Williams by chance?
Yeah.
Kent Williams?
Yeah. And so you have the street environment that becomes normal, and everything is normalized because you see violent crime all the time, and at times you start to suppress what you feel afterwards by hitting the bottle, by smoking, whatever it is that you do. Mm-hmm. And you want to hide that from your family. So, and because you're hiding stuff, it puts stress on your marriages, your relationships. And I went through that, and then you're distrusting of admin because they hold you accountable to what behaviors are taking place on the street. So when I retired, I drank a lot, man. And I ended up getting divorced afterwards. When my world turned quiet, it was a rude awakening for me. And it turned quiet, which is why I ended up leaving Scott County too. It turned quiet because in Scott County, I was on a trial, and there was a defendant there who was there for kidnapping and assault and everything. And the defendant, at the time, bailiffs would put what they call a rack belt. It's like a taser belt on a defendant, and that's why they're able to sit there in plain clothes. And you have an officer that has the button to push, and it activates it, and they'll seize up. And what happened was, this guy was real violent, and he turns on his public defender, and he starts beating the crap out of his public defender. And I was by the front part, and the other officer is behind, the other deputy is behind him. And so I run over, jump on the guy, because the officer was startled, and he didn't activate it and didn't know what to do. And so I am in the middle of the gallery on top of this guy, just doing what the Lord's work. And I look up, and after I throw handcuffs on, I look up, and it's just the look on people's face. It was just like in awe. They were scared. They were, and it was one of those moments where, like, this could go a couple different ways depending on how they view my use of force. And I knew then that my time was up. I didn't want to leave my freedom, my personal freedom, in the hands of others, because I felt if these jurors are siding with this guy being a victim, because at the time the tempo was in the communities, it was different with, and it was shortly after that I ended up walking away from Scott County, because I felt I was a little more old school than new school, and but man.
So the quiet, you talk about the quiet.
Yeah,
you leave the job, and
you leave that, man. I left the job, and you see ghosts, things that you see, events come to, things that you did will visit you in the middle of the night. So I've been in counseling, given what my military experience was, man, that I ended up taking life there, and then given what some of the things that, some of the loss of deaths that happened, those souls, they come back and they haunt you at times, and it's not that I didn't make peace. I'm at peace with all of that now. I sleep, but there was a time where I turned to drinking because I was trying not to to remember or have those visitors at night, you know.
So let me ask you, while you're on the job, everything's
No, you
pretty
still
good, right? Or
no, you
Oh,
know, you're hiding shit, you know, as
okay.
a, you know, I there's parts of my kids suffered, man,
Yeah.
because I was so addicted to the adrenaline of the streets.
Okay.
Because, you know, and it's crazy, man. It's so crazy that there were times where, you know, it's shit is popping off everywhere and they're looking for guys to stay over, and you would just volunteer because you know that hot call is going to happen. You know you're going to get to do this and do that. And my kids suffered. I was a single parent, and I've made my peace with my son and daughter, and I love them both. They love me, and but they struggled, and you know I had those flare up of tempers because at the time I still had shit from the military that I hadn't addressed, and so my kids suffered, and I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. But as a result of it, I've learned those lessons, and I am not an absent grandfather. I have grandkids, and I refuse to be an absent grandfather. I was an absent dad for a while. And even though I was able to get an award of Father of the Year from my kids because my kids knew I loved them. And I was there for them, but there was a time where I was not the best dad, you know. And those were the times where I was in the middle of the chaos. Because the streets are fucking chaos, and the streets will fucking kill you. But at times you think it's the best place for you, and it's not.
So when you look back at your career professionally, do you have any regrets?
I probably would have changed my how I did. Probably would have made an effort to be more present at home. You know, I've been married and divorced several times, and you know, I'm in a relationship now with a beautiful lady, and we've crossed 6 years, and you know, I know that I don't want to be alone later on in life. I'm 58 years old, man. You know, my life today, I'm a full-time instructor for MMA and jiu-jitsu, submission wrestling. I coach wrestling for a club, and that's my purpose. I think that too many times, guys, I never really identified. I identified as a police officer, but it wasn't my sole identity. And I think what happens is too many times where you identify that as your only identity, that it tends to take a toll on you into retirement. And that's not who I am. And I mentor warriors and the warrior mindset nowadays. I have a thriving school. And in fact, this morning, teaching my Muay Thai kickboxing class, I got a kid that just came back from Florida, and he visited a school down there, in a well-renowned school. The kid's been with us for 6 months, and I have active UFC guys, retired UFC guys at my school, and he was telling me that he got invited to their pro camp, to their pro classes, and took to task a couple of their senior guys, and I was really proud. And it just kind of shows that, you know, nothing beats hard work, you know. And so for me, it is mentoring that mindset so that we still have the alpha type individual out there, not the beta type, you know.
So you have a long career, you see a lot of things, experience a lot, and you've kind of talked a little bit about it on the edges. How do you decide that it's time to retire?
You know, for me, it was when I was with Rockford, it was when my chief called me in to tell me that he wanted to transfer me out of training. And at the time, you know, I was you know, going to complete the 26 years, and it was just, for me, it was just like, you know, I'm not that guy anymore. You know, you're working all these years, and you say, yeah, when I retire, I'm not going to do this. I'm never going to put on a uniform. I'm never going to go back to law enforcement. And but it was, that was the defining moment for me when the chief says, I need you back, and I need you in, or I need you in gangs or narcotics. And I'm gonna be 50. Why am I doing trash pulls? Why am I doing these late night surveillance? I'm gonna be absent again. I was married at the time. I'm gonna be absent again from home. I don't want to do that anymore. And ultimately, I ended up getting retired. I ended up retiring, and my relationship was fucked anyway. I ended up getting divorced. But the divorce and then all that stuff, it just caused me to that. And I've just a fucked up place to be, man. When you're drinking every day and you're drinking heavy, and I was able to hide that from my, I wasn't able to, I wasn't hiding that I was drinking because I was partying all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but I was able to hide everything else with it, It's just, it's a fucked up place. When I went on to Scott County, it was kind of a fluke, man. There was a deputy living nearby in the area that I was living in, and he's like, "Hey, you an officer? I'm like, "I'm retired." He goes, "Where'd you retire from?" "Rockford." "What's your name?" And I told him. He's like, "All right." And he took my name and number, went to Scott County, and then the lieutenant there called me, Chad Cribb. He's like, "Hey, you got a minute to come down and talk to me?" Like, "Yeah." He's like, "Hey, we're always looking for good people." And so he's like, "You want a job?" Like, not really. Because come on, part-time. Well, what am I looking at? Like 20 hours? He goes, "Yeah, part-time." And so and when I'm talking to him, he's like, "Hey, what's your social security number?" Like, "Let me see your driver's license." Okay. Da 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 da. He was a whole battery of questions. Like, okay. He goes, "Okay, well, can you start next Tuesday?" I'm like, I'm like, what? And so I started, and by the end of the week, I was full-time.
Wow.
I was like, fuck.
Wow.
I didn't want full-time.
Oh.
But once I was in uniform, my mindset changed.
Yeah.
I was still, partying and all that, but it was different, but it was a defining moment for Scott County was that trial, and that trial, and I just couldn't stomach my supervisor at the time, and my supervisor he was a micromanager there, and I'm like, dude, I was an investigator. I know. And the funny thing is, he'd say, "Hey, every time you're working, if I give you a task, I don't have to worry about it. It gets done. Then why are you micromanaging me?" And but that part of my life is over, and I'm grateful for the experience, and I'm grateful that I was able to live that life and make it to retirement, because retirement is a gift that not many are able to attain.
So do you miss the job?
I miss elements of the job. Mm-hmm. I'll miss the adrenaline. I had, I share stories of, the hundreds of drug raids that we did, man. I share stories with guys, and, and it's like, boom, 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 boom. And then the guy's like, "Well, what'd you do?" I'm like, "This is what I did." Or the car chases, or the different fights that you went out there, I miss some of that adrenaline. Mm-hmm. I'm an adrenaline junkie, man. And, but I don't miss the job. I don't miss the hurry up and wait. I don't miss all the mounds of paperwork. I don't miss any of that stuff. I just miss the human interaction. But, I don't miss crowds, man. I don't go to too many crowd things anymore. I live in Bettendorf, Iowa. And for what I know, man, the community here where I live, I have neighbors that don't lock their doors. That's crazy to me. I got security cameras everywhere, my armament, and I have 4 dogs. And so and even then, by times I find that I'll even get up at times if for one reason or another I have a vision or something, or I have a dream or something that wakes me up. I still walk the perimeter of my house, and, but it is. I mean, I'm still here. I'm 58 years old. I'm still in good health. I've had some incidents, but I'm still in good health, and I hope to be here as long as I can. You know.
So, do you have any words of advice for someone who might watch this episode?
You know, as far as words of advice, don't be afraid to make that human contact on the street, and your best weapon out there is the ability to talk. And because in talking, you can develop those leads for those crimes that have taken place, other than just trying to base it on technology. Two, be courageous. You know, don't be afraid to fall down and get back up. You know, be courageous, because otherwise regrets will come in. You know, and three, do everything possible to make it home in the same fashion that you went to work. You know, no matter what. You know, weight train, do calisthenics, do some, cross training, whether it's in boxing, karate, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, wrestling, do something. But train your heart, because it's when that heart goes, man, it sucks. In my time, I have experienced several officer suicides, and do something to keep your brain engaged. Have another identity other than police. So, and take care of each other.
Aurelio, I want to thank you for agreeing to sit down with me and sharing all of your stories and your journey with a badge, some funny stuff, some sad stuff, and definitely some lessons to take away. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope that it was worth it. I hope it wasn't too cheesy.
No, not at all, man. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Peace.